Excellencies and dear friends, I'm of course delighted to join you again at this gathering of minds. Now, the Asia-Pacific Roundtable has entered its 39th year and still going strong. It's one of the foremost of regional strategic security conferences. So, congratulations again to ISIS and ASEAN ISIS. Now, our future, particularly Malaysia's future, is invariably linked to that of ASEAN. That's why I believe that ASEAN centrality, the misgivings notwithstanding, must remain the cornerstone of our foreign policy and a primary platform through which we advance not just our interests, but also regional peace, prosperity, and stability. Some challenges came unexpectedly amidst our tenure. A devastating earthquake in Myanmar, already in the throes of a civil war, the border clashes between Cambodia and Thailand, and the unilateral, unfair, and fundamentally flawed tariffs imposed by the United States. Now, on Myanmar, when ASEAN leaders met recently in Cebu, we deliberated if our efforts could be bolder and more creative. Future engagements must not merely be more proactive and comprehensive, but also more pragmatic. That is why ASEAN should continue to engage all sides, and emphasize all sides in Myanmar. The authorities in Naypyidaw, opposition political parties, ethnic armed groups, and local NGOs. It cannot be overstated that the eventual political settlement must be Myanmar-owned and Myanmar-led process, not one imposed externally. It will be a long process, and this is where ASEAN centrality will be pivotal in fostering our collective determination and move forward. On the Thai-Cambodian situation, I'm encouraged that my friends, Prime Minister Anutin Javirakul and Prime Minister Hun Manet, remain committed towards a lasting peace and continue to engage vigorously. We must approach issues with clarity and conviction, head on where possible, and discreetly where necessary, always seeking to uphold a united front among ASEAN members and to collaborate where possible with like-minded dialogue partners. Now, Malaysia welcomes, therefore, the understanding, well, temporarily or permanently, I'm not too sure, but what is termed as the understanding, preliminary somewhat, but what a relief, reached between United States and Iran. Towards ending month of hostilities, absolutely unnecessary, creating so much difficulties, tensions, economic calamities. And therefore we commend the efforts of the Gulf countries, Pakistan, Turkey, and others, Qatar, to bring about the MOU. Yet, as we have seen, and now over the last few days, peace is most fragile and susceptible to sabotage. Violations of the MOU are a real concern. Adhering to all terms of the ceasefire and the reopening of the Straits of Hormuz to the international shipping must now be treated as a matter of highest urgency. Food and energy prices remain high as countries seek to secure supplies. Billions of dollars which could have been used for social, economic development, deal with the problem of abject poverty, gross inequality, areas that continue to be marginalized, has instead been diverted to procuring essential goods. These are not mere statistics on paper. We are dealing with impact to livelihoods of the common man and woman. Yet we all know that this conflict did not happen in a vacuum. Our attention should not be drawn away from the overall situation in West Asia, the relentless bloodletting of the Palestinians, the genocide in Gaza, and the incessant bombardment of Lebanon. It bears repetition that the continued occupation, oppression, and dispossession of the people of Palestine is part and parcel of the insidious campaign of settler colonialism pursued by the Zionists. And mind you, coming from my generation, strong anti-colonial position, anti-imperialist position, and suddenly seeing countries hectoring about democracy and human rights and condoning these excesses is totally absurd. So, ladies and gentlemen, history reminds us of the years we had spent in waging war against colonization, fighting tooth and nail, of course from other parts of the world, but here, Indonesia, Vietnam, to name the rest, against oppressors to reclaim our lands and independence. Today, can we in good conscience sit idly while this insidious form of colonization continues to be perpetrated with impunity? Now, the latest findings of the International Commission of Inquiry of the actions of Israeli security forces since 7th October 2023 reveals a story of untold and unparalleled horror with the systematic, deliberate, and targeted killing of more than 20,000 Palestinian children and the inflicting of grave injury to another 44,000. To my mind, this has reached a point where even the term genocide does not fully capture the barbarity, depravity, and sheer evil of these heinous crimes committed by the murderers. This remains a festering wound in the collective conscience of the world. The failure to intervene, especially by countries with the power to influence the Zionist regime, has only empowered them to expand their wars in the region. Meanwhile, in Europe, the Russo-Ukrainian war continues its grind of death with civilians and public infrastructure targeted and huge loss of life on all sides. In Sudan, the civil war rages on, largely ignored by the global community, also with horrific atrocities documented against non-combatants, some targeted based on tribe or ethnicity. So let us be clear. Such violence and brutality, whether in Europe, West Asia, or Africa, must come to an end with a cessation of hostilities, prioritizes the protection of civilians. It paints a bleak future when humankind could otherwise be celebrating tremendous advancement of economic and technological growth. Most disturbingly, the signs point towards a greater and systematic devaluation of respect of international norms and laws. Might now makes right, as does narrow national interests, even at the expense of rubbishing the sanctity and legal obligations of an international contract. Malaysia learned this lesson recently when the delivery of naval strike missiles were unilaterally cancelled by the Norwegian supplier, despite almost full payment being made, 95% paid. Norway. So our position on this to both the company and the Norwegian government is crystal clear. While Malaysia will continue to seek diplomatic and legal remedies and do so in good faith, this episode speaks to a larger problem and dangerous trend of double standards by those who claim to stand by the rule of law and the hypocrisy of those who are conveniently muted on such violations. It is acceptable for some countries to ignore international laws and norms, while others are subjected to the strictest standards of compliance. If this is how partners in the West are going to treat those of us in the global South, If the principle of one rule for me, another for thee, is indeed the norm they want to put forward, then it does not bode well for our future as equitable partners and friends. As the old Dutch saying goes, trust arrives on foot and departs on horseback. So, ladies and gentlemen, given the challenging geopolitical and economic fluctuations, how can Malaysia navigate itself in an increasingly uncertain, undependable, and transactional world? How do we uphold our agency and advance our interests? So first and foremost, Malaysia's foreign policy will remain independent, and that is fiercely independent, proactive and non-aligned. This is not merely clinging to the past, but a calculated and deliberate approach which considers who we are, where we came from, what served us well, and how we need to adapt. We will not hesitate to adopt positions, cultivate relationships, and support initiatives that advance our values, beliefs, and interests. Malaysia, on the other hand, cannot remain neutral on matters that involve fundamental rights, such as the Palestinian struggle, or in countering Islamophobia, or on our core national interests, including territorial sovereignty, even when it comes to powerful partners like China and the United States of America. We remain in touch, we engage aggressively, we maintain our strong bond of friendship, and we realize that peace and prosperity should be in the forefront while protecting our national security. Therefore, we take a principled stances and positions and not take sides. Easier said than done. You are familiar with this. We are expected sometimes to take strong positions, particularly against our neighbor, China, but we have said, no. We will take a principled stance. We'll continue to cultivate friendship. As you know, Malaysia is still registering trade and investments, number one, with the United States, but we remain aggressively and engaging more effectively with China, which is growing economy and an important neighbor to us. So these include our unwavering support for the resolution or peaceful resolution of disputes in accordance with international law. Because the use of force or coercion, military or economic, will only compound resentment and unintended consequences. Our norms like the freedom of navigation, respect for sovereignty, adherence to established legal frameworks are essential for regional and global security. So on that score, Malaysia reiterates our commitment to multilateralism and collaborative, consultative approaches in the conduct among nations. We do not just support such mechanisms and approaches, we endeavor to do what we can to defend it. Global governance should reflect contemporary realities. Developing countries and the global south deserve greater representation in decision-making with the perspectives of Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Pacific carrying greater weight. Global rules should be shaped with, not merely for, developing nations. The answer to ever greater uncertainty and weakening of global norms and institutions is not less multilateralism, but more effective cooperation. No one country can effectively address the ramifications of climate change, pandemics, food security, or cyber threat alone. The international community should strengthen not weaken multilateral institutions. Now, given our rich heritage and diversity, Islamic, Chinese, Indian, indigenous, which is quite unique, I believe Malaysia, with our colleagues in ASEAN, is uniquely positioned to build understanding across regions, cultures, and civilizations. We will continue to engage actively with our neighbors in ASEAN, with countries in the global south and the third world, or the global south, and the Islamic world. And we'll continue this again with a principled stance of centrality. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're not overstretching our influence as a small country, but we must realize that as a trading nation, spreading global trade routes and supply chains is a trademark of our economic policy. In real terms, however, foreign policy is not merely about diplomacy of international trade. It is about jobs. It is about investments, technology, education, and opportunities for all. Here, urban and rural and the heartland. So over the years, we have worked to deepen economic ties with our traditional trading and investment partners, utilizing existing free trade agreements such as ASEAN FTA, RCEP, CPTPP. We have been at the front to streamline tariffs, improve market access, and facilitate more equitable investment flows. Concurrently, we also sought to expand trade with newer, less leveraged markets in West Asia, Central Asia, Latin America, and across the African continent. This is where economic policy and economic diplomacy rides on geopolitics yielding an ideal combination. So our approach is on genuine collaboration in areas such as halal industries, digital economy, agriculture, and green tech. Above all, energy is strategically pivotal. Just recently, in conjunction with my official visit to Turkmenistan, Petronas signed agreements with state entities to explore and develop two massive gas fields. This was coupled with the signing of a long-term framework on hydrocarbon development, including the role of human and technical capital between Malaysia and Turkmenistan. And this is an extension of what we have done and achieved remarkable success in terms of establishing the ASEAN energy grid, Vietnam, across to Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, to Malaysia, Singapore, and the undersea cable from Sarawak to Sabah, Indonesia, Philippines, and to Singapore. This sort of a concrete, cohesive understanding and partnership is, to my mind, unrivaled. This is the unique story, success story of ASEAN and ASEAN collaboration. So our goal is to continue to strengthen this existing partnership, build new ones, and keep our economic ties broad-based, resilient, and forward-looking. In a most uncertain global environment, diversification is not just an economic strategy. It is a national and regional necessity. What we have strived over for the years when it comes to Malaysia's foreign policy may be stated as the following: an approach that is principled, not yet constrained by rigidity, ambitious and bold without being reckless, fiercely independent without forsaking the spirit of conviviality and collaboration. So, thank you for your participation, and we're here also to listen to your views that could shape and improve and enhance our collaboration and our more meaningful foreign policy. Saya ucap terima kasih atas kehadiran rakan-rakan semua. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.